Thank you, Alistair. For the past 6 years on Nullag Naman, the women leaders at Accenture have gathered to welcome and congratulate our newly hired and newly promoted women in senior roles. The event is all about sustaining a network to mentor and sponsor the next generation of women leaders. And we didn't hold it last year because of COVID, and this year, with safety top of mind, we met virtually, gathering in our homes online. And there were lots of stories on the night. Individually and as a society, we've been sustained by affection, by love, new starts and new births. Working parents of all genders adjusted, and children continued to grow and develop with no mind on the pandemic. And we've all learned to do things differently. Technology has helped us to adapt, to connect, and to engage with the arts and watch theatre, lectures and dance from all over the world while cocooning safely at home. And in those periods of isolation, levels of air, water and noise pollution dropped in many places worldwide. Earth found a new rhythm, and nature's resiliency gives us all hope for the future. But those 2 years have also been a time of loss on many fronts. In addition to the pandemic, we have seen catastrophic worldwide weather events and biodiversity collapse. In many places, erosion of trust in government and media have given a space for denial of the climate emergency and a mistrust in public health advice. Domestic violence has been described as a pandemic within the pandemic. Certain regimes have gone out of their way to decriminalise domestic violence, and the grief of the scenes we are seeing in Ukraine bring home the unbearable cost of male violence. I was reminded of the words of Betty Williams, still the only Irish woman to deliver a Nobel lecture. And when she spoke about the formation of Community for Peace People in Northern Ireland, she talked about the deep sense of frustration at the mindless stupidity of the continuing violence. She said, as far as we are concerned, every single death in every war that was ever fought represents life needlessly wasted, a mother's labour spurned. We are for life and creation, and we are against war and destruction. And in our rage in that terrible week, we screamed that the violence had to stop. That speech was in 1977, 45 years ago, and how poignant today. So on Nullag Naman, like every other day, safety was top of mind, and little did we know that just 6 days later, a young woman would be murdered in broad daylight while out for a run. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a time she most likely selected in order to avoid going out after dark for safety. At a national level, there's been a huge outpouring of grief, but also an outpouring of testimony, forcing a collective reckoning with gender-based violence that is anything but random. She was just 23, and in her short life, over 200 women died violently in Ireland. The names of those women have been recorded and remembered collectively through the work of Women's Aid. Many killed in their own homes by a man they knew. Where do we start to tackle the crisis of male violence and misogyny that is so deeply normalised? All over the country, women have been sharing their own stories and experiences. And those stories are along a continuum from fear and harassment and violence through unsettling experiences and everyday sexism. Stories of the many precautions they take to try to feel safe going about their business. And stories of the limitations they place on their own activities in order to avoid situations they deem unsafe. And it's become clear that many of these decisions and actions are invisible to men at work. We simply haven't talked about them. And as we've started to talk, people of all genders are asking, what can we do? And what can I do? So the events and vigils over the past several weeks have prompted us to make the conversation broader. How can we play our part in the space that we know best, the business community, with our clients and our partners, but also in all of the other spaces that we occupy as citizens, as parents, and as friends. It is a complex problem, but we have never shied away from those, and it is a leadership issue. Changing the culture will require an all-society change in attitudes, in language, and in responsibility. And like every other change, it starts with stories, conversations, and changing the way that we talk and we think about violence in society, in homes, and online. So on this International Women's Day 2022, we wanted to use our platform to have a conversation about meaningful change and action to end violence against women.